No one has seen God at any time. No one. No one has heard God's voice at any time. Are those statements true? No one has seen God at any time. And yet we know that in the scriptures, did not God appear to Moses, Abraham and others? What about Jesus' time? Didn't people see Jesus? Those who say that Jesus is God, right? Of course, the argument is that that wasn't the Father, that was God. Jesus, God, or part of the Godhead as the Son. But what about after his death and resurrection? Did not people see the glorified Son? Yes. So it's a difficult question to answer. Now let me give you some of the points, the text that I'm referring to, and some of the arguments or for and against, and give you my perspective. So John 1:18 says, no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. So here's Jesus' statement, or the statement is made, no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father. So this close proximity that Jesus had with the Father, has he declared that no one had seen God, but he has, right? And of course we know that the apostles, some of the disciples, had seen and heard of Jesus' Father. We know John the Baptist, for example, at his baptism, he heard the voice of God. And the Transfiguration was another account. And I think somewhere else, I just can't think the other account, where it clearly highlights that the Father's voice was heard by those that were in close proximity to Jesus. So they're the only real occasions that we know in the New Testament that one's heard the Father speak. Here's an interesting thought from Jesus in John chapter 5. Okay, so that's fair enough. Does that mean that because no one has seen God at any time, that it is also true of Moses and others? Is that what Jesus is saying? Because we know clearly, if you read the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy, etc., you hear the voice and Moses speaks face to face with God. What does that mean? We'll get to that first, but first, let's have a look at John chapter 5, verse 36 to 37. He says, this is Jesus speaking, the works which the Father has given me to finish, the very works that I do, I bear witness. Bear witness of me, that the Father has sent me. That's pretty straightforward so far. And the Father himself who sent me has testified of me. So that's clear. The Father has testified of Christ to others. Then he says, you have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form. So that's quite interesting as well. Now this is in John chapter 5, of course. Transfiguration happens. We hear the voice of God. So maybe up till that point, no one had heard the Father's voice, nor seen his form. So why is that? Well, clearly because Jesus goes on to show that, the apostles go on to show that he is invisible. He's a spirit. Jesus said that he is a spirit in John chapter 4. John chapter 6, verse 46, he says, not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God has seen the Father. But we know that he's invisible. 1 Timothy 1:17 says he's invisible. 1 Timothy 6:16 says, who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light, whom no man has seen or can see. And in 1 John 4:12, no one has seen God at any time. This is John, right, writing this some 30, 40 years later. No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love has been perfected in us. Okay, so we have this bit of a problem, don't you think? It's a problem for Trinitarians, because people have seen Jesus, part of the Godhead, and it's a problem for those who believe that Yahweh is the Father. Why is that? Because simple explanation or reasoning is that people have heard and seen Yahweh. Now, how do we get around that? Well, I guess if you're when you look into the scriptures, if you read the context and you read other accounts in the scriptures, it does say that in the book of Hebrews and I think Galatians, that the law was transmitted by angels. God said also that, and so we have this sort of a dilemma that the law was given not by God himself, but representatives of him. So then we see this passage. Then we see these sort of passages where in Exodus 33:11 it says, "So the Lord Yahweh spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend." And then Numbers 14:14, it says here, "And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land, they have heard that you, Lord Yahweh, are among these people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in a pillar cloud day and in a pillar by night." Deuteronomy 5:4, "And the Lord Yahweh talked with you face to face on the mountain." Deuteronomy says, the words of the Lord Yahweh spoke to all of you assembly in a thick darkness with fire cloud in a thick darkness with a loud voice, and the voice from the midst of the darkness. It says in verse 23, so it was when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness. And then in verse 24, "And we heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen this, that day God speaks with man." Other passages says, "So the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near the thick darkness where God was." Why does this reference to thick darkness, God's in darkness? Isn't he in the unapproachable light? Yet why does he choose to be seen in darkness? Isn't darkness more associated with the enemy of God? Just saying, right? Just have a look at 1 Timothy 6:16 again. It says there, "Who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light." So there's a couple of things I wanted to bring out. If we're saying the argument is that this is figurative, like obviously Moses, if the law was transmitted by angels, obviously he didn't speak to God and he didn't see God at any time. But I want to take you back for one moment to this passage in Exodus 33:21-23, because it's sort of a little bit difficult. If God is in unapproachable light, as has been stated, and he's in another dimension, as it's been stated, and he's not confined to our finite life with forms, but he is a light, he's a spirit, right? So if we can imagine that and somehow grasp this thought that, he's not, we really don't know his form. We can't say he has a type of form. We can't certainly say he's a spirit, right? But what about God, Yahweh? Is he a form of some sort? Notice this in Exodus 33, verses 21-23. It says, "And the Lord Yahweh said, Here is a place by me, and you shall stand on the rock. So it shall be, while my glory passes by, that I will put in a cleft of the rock, and will cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I will take my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." Isn't that interesting that he says that? So he's saying, you can see my back, but you won't see my face because of his glory. Okay, I get that. But why say that he can see his back? Surely he's not lying and saying, no, it's not me, it's somebody else. He would have said completely, you can't see me. I'm in an unapproachable light. I am invisible. It's impossible to see me. Yet here he's saying, yeah, you can see me. Do you see the dilemma that we face? And the problem is this, friends, is that we're sort of conditioned by the church fathers and modern day thinking, which is derived from the church fathers, that God that is was seen or heard, or wasn't seen or heard, it was figurative. When you start playing these sort of games, some say butchering the text, which is not really true. We're just asking questions which can be, I guess, answered if we start to say stuff like this, which is heretical, depending on which Christian circle you talk to, that it's possible that the Father isn't Jehovah or Yahweh, that Yahweh is his own person, the enemy is his own person, the devil, that is. Some say that the devil is Jehovah. Now, I've sort of toyed around with that. I'm not too sure. So I don't want to get bogged down with that. But do you see where we're at, friends? Is there a clear explanation that you're satisfied with? I'm still working this through, and I'm not quick to make any decisions. I don't care if I sit on it for years, But it's an interesting talk. What do you think? No one has seen or heard of any God any time. As Jesus stated, it is clear that there were some instances in the New Testament while Jesus was walking that within those that were with him heard the Father speak. But it's interesting that no one prior to that would have heard the Father or seen the Father, and yet we have instances which is explained in some way, to some degree, that the angels had some role in transmitting the law. It doesn't mean, though, that the angels always spoke when it's written that Yahweh spoke, and it doesn't mean, like it says there in Exodus, that Moses didn't see Yahweh, where in fact it says that Yahweh said that he would let him see him, but not his glory. He would let him see his back. Just some things to think about, right? Okay, that's my thoughts for the day. See you later.